Welcome to Make It Count. I'm your host, JG, and today's episode, we're going to do a preview of the NFL, starting with our AFC conference. But before we get into that, please, as always, like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps the channel, and I greatly appreciate it. But before we even get into that, let's talk about the major trade that just happened recently with Micah Parsons being sent from the Dallas Cowboys to the Green Bay Packers. I want to share a little bit about my thoughts and feelings about that, starting out with the Dallas Cowboys. They fumbled this whole ordeal. Jerry has to go. If you are a Dallas Cowboys fan, you should be sick to your stomach about how Jerry Jones has operated this team the last several years.
Emotional damage.
Won Super Bowls back in the 90s, but they have not sniffed a conference championship in 27 years. And I'm going to say that's going to continue into this year because, again, you have one of the most elite young pass rushers in the NFL in your grasp. And for whatever reason, you felt the need to disrespect him, which made him decide that he wants to leave. I'll give you just a quick snippet of Micah Parsons' career stats. Only the second NFL player in history to have 12 sacks in his first 4 years. He's a 4-time Pro Bowler, and he is a 3-time All-Pro first-team player. And again, you don't see a lot of 26-year-old pass rushers or 25-year-old pass rushers hit the open market like that right before the season. I don't know how their offense or their defense is going to really survive when their offense has to score a lot of points and their defense probably can't stop a nosebleed. Deron Bland and Trayvon Diggs are still recovering from injuries, and they don't really have an elite pass rusher on that front seven. So I don't know how they're going to generate any pressure against any of the teams. And on the flip side, Green Bay, you have to be elated that you were able to get an elite pass rusher, not only just from a rival, but one where you can help solidify that defense. If I'm the Green Bay Packers, I'm elated right now. I'm definitely going to pencil myself in for at least a conference championship. I think the Detroit Lions still might have the edge slightly, but we'll talk about that later on, and we'll definitely want to keep an eye out on how the Green Bay Packers play this season, especially when they have to go back to Arlington for a Sunday night football game in Week 4 against the Dallas Cowboys. So to begin the NFL preview, while this is just a prediction type of episode, I mean, there's going to be some things that I can't predict, such as injuries. So keep that in mind that some of the predictions are going to be based off if everyone is healthy, relatively the main stars, the quarterbacks, the wide receivers of a team doesn't experience any kind of major injury that will sideline them for the whole season. Let's start off the AFC North with the Baltimore Ravens. At 12-5, the Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson experiment worked wonders. Now, my first question that I want to ask is, can that work again in year 2? The answer is yes. I have no doubt Lamar Jackson will do Lamar Jackson type things, and I have no doubt that Derrick Henry will continue to show why he's one of the better running backs in the NFL. The question I have is if coaching is going to finally utilize the team properly throughout the course of the season. There's times where the offense sometimes get pass happy, and that's not their strength, especially in playoff times. I see John Harbaugh sometimes go away from the run to be more pass dependent, and this is not how the team is built. You're hoping that with some of the weapons they added off the offseason, maybe that may help them. My second question is, can the Ravens finally get to the promised land? I'm sorry to disappoint Raven fans. I don't think so. But I will say the Ravens do have a good chance of getting at least to the conference championship, but I'm not entirely sure that this team is going to get to the promised land, unfortunately. So let's talk about some key additions the Ravens made. They picked up DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins is a very good, serviceable wide receiver. He's not an elite wide receiver like he used to be, but he's still a serviceable wide receiver. They picked up Jair Alexander, who got cut earlier in the offseason by the Green Bay Packers. They picked up Malachi Starks, the safety from Georgia, Mike Green, and they picked up Tyler Loop to replace Justin Tucker. But I will say this, if you're Baltimore, one strength, which was your special teams and kicking, is now going to be a bit of a question mark going into the season. So my prediction for them is going to be 12-5. I think they're going to end up with the same record they had last year. I don't see much difference. I think they got a lot of good pieces on offense and defense. But again, what's the real question is, can they really push to get into the Super Bowl? I have my doubts. Up next, the Pittsburgh Steelers. At 10-7, they continue Mike Tomlin's long tradition of having a winning record. Out goes Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. In comes in Aaron Rodgers. So can this offense continue and can this defense continue to stay relevant in today's NFL? We got a couple of questions for them. Let's start with the first one. Can Mike Tomlin continue to have a winning record in the NFL? He's the only head coach in history to have a winning record in each season he has coached, and I think that trend continues. Now, the shocker is I don't think this team is going to be a playoff team, though. But I think they're going to have a winning record. This roster is a bit older on the defensive side of the ball. You have an aging quarterback. You don't really have a solution for your future quarterback right now on the roster, I think. And again, DK Metcalf just got here. I'm not sure what's going on with their running game. There's a lot of question marks for this offense. So we'll see as the season progresses. My next question is, was enough done by the Steelers during NFL free agency and the NFL draft? The answer is time will tell. I mean, they did pick up via trade DK Metcalf. They waited after the draft to get Aaron Rodgers because Aaron Rodgers was being Aaron Rodgers. And I mean, I think they got some other pieces. I mean, we'll talk about their key additions in a moment, but I think they did enough to keep themselves afloat. Their defense should still be really good with TJ Watt there. I think they got a bunch of guys that has been in the league for a while, know how to play good football. And I don't really think that a Tomlin coach defense is going to just fall off the map. So they're going to be in games often. So let's talk about some of their key additions. Again, we just mentioned DK Metcalf. We mentioned Aaron Rodgers, Jalen Ramsey, and Jonnu Smith in a very, what I would say, weird trade, just because of the player they sent back, who was Minka Fitzpatrick, started his career with the Miami Dolphins, only to end up getting traded years later back to the Miami Dolphins. So it's a very weird trade for me. And I'm not really sure. I don't know if those two will really move the needle that much, but Arthur Smith, who is by far the worst offensive coordinator in the NFL, my opinion, he just knows how to ruin a team. Simple. Other pieces they picked up in the draft, the defensive tackle Derek Harmon from Oregon and Caleb Johnson, the running back from Iowa. My prediction, 9-8. Next team, the Cincinnati Bengals. Can Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati offense maintain a high-powered, high-scoring offense? We'll discuss. My first question for the Bengals. Can they start off fast? Zach Taylor's teams in the last few years have consistently started slow. This year, I am banking that Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, the offense is going to start at a good pace. They have to. They cannot continue to try to play catch up towards the end of the season and try to make the playoffs. But I say this year, they'll change it. And then the last thing I have questions about is we talk about so much about the offense for the Cincinnati Bengals. Is the defense going to be able to do anything? Yes, they drafted Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M. Trey Hendrickson is back on his contract for 1 year. I hope to goodness that they at least can generate some pressure with those two defensive ends. And maybe they'll get some help on the back end with some of their safeties. I am the Bengals. I expect the team to score a lot of points in order to win. And let's talk about their key additions, which is really not much because all they've done is just drafted their players and they re-signed their players, which again, you kind of have to make sure you keep T. Higgins happy. You have to keep Jamar Chase happy. And finally, I think you kind of gave Trey Henderson something to look forward to. So my prediction for them is going to be 11-6. I think they're going to win 2 more games this year than they did last year. And I think they're going to make the playoffs and they're going to make some noise in the playoffs this year. And finally, the Cleveland Browns. I don't know what to tell you because they were 3-14 last year, and I'm going to kind of make it obvious. I don't really see much difference. Deshaun Watson's out for the season. Jameis Winston is now with the Giants. Now you're bringing Joe Flacco, you draft Dylan Gabriel, you draft Shadur Sanders. This is a completely different quarterback room. No more Nick Chubb. In comes in Quinyon Junkins. It's a completely different offense the Cleveland Browns will have this coming season. So let's talk about what my 2 questions are for them. First question is, will there be a quarterback change? I just think it depends on when this happens. Whether if Joe Flacco and the team starts off completely 0-6 and then they decide to make a change at quarterback. If Kevin Stefanski gets fired, I think they'll make a change at quarterback, whoever the new coach will be at that point. I mean, there's a lot of questions regarding how well this team will do. And again, this is really one of the hardest type of teams to kind of predict. Not because I know they're going to lose. I know they're going to lose a lot of games. I just don't know if this team is going to really be able to salvage the season by changing a quarterback. And I don't know if they have the quarterback of the future on their roster right now. I mean, yes, a lot of people are clamoring for Shadur Sanders, but I mean, he still has some work to do. He still showed some promise. Dylan Gabriel showed some promise as well. But I don't know if the front office feels that their best chance to win games is currently on the roster. And my last question for the Cleveland Browns, is Kevin Stefanski's job safe? He had Baker Mayfield. He had, success with Baker Mayfield early on. Once he got injured, they went with Deshaun Watson, traded Baker Mayfield. We know the rest of what's happened with Baker Mayfield and how he's doing a lot better in Tampa Bay. But the Deshaun Watson experiment has blown up in their face massively. A lot of money, a lot of assets given up. Not really a good deal for the Cleveland Browns. And Stefanski's kind of just been stuck having to play Deshaun Watson for the last couple of years because there's no way to justify that contract being on the bench. You have to play him. What are you doing? But he's not the best option for your offense. Now he's injured. You're going to go with a whole new quarterback room. And let's be honest, the division that they're in is so tough. I just find it very hard to think they're going to do really much of anything. So let's talk about some of their key additions. They brought in defensive tackle Malik Collins. They drafted Mason Graham. They did draft, again, Dylan Gabriel, Quinion Junkin, Shadur Sanders. So my prediction is they're going to be 4-13. And yes, that's one more win that they had last year. I think Joe Flacco will lead them to an unexpected win. Myles Garrett and that defense is still pretty stout, but again, when you're on the field all the time as a defense, there's really not much you can do when your offense isn't putting up points. So I don't know. Their offensive line hasn't really been as good either. So we'll see how they go during the season. Next up, the AFC South. Let's start with the Houston Texans, 10-7. CJ Stroud did not have exactly the year we thought he was going to have. They still make the playoffs, and they still had a playoff victory against the Los Angeles Chargers last year. So the two questions I want to ask is, will any team challenge the Texans in this division for the crown? And the answer is no, absolutely not. There's no way that any of the teams in their conference or their division, is going to challenge them. Just don't see it. My next question is, who will step up on offense to help Nico Collins? With Tank Dell being out for a good time in the season, maybe even out for the whole season, and Jaden Higgins being a rookie and Christian Kirk having a disappointing season last year, there's a lot of question marks about where this team is going to get additional offense from. Joe Mixon is expected to miss a few games as well. So CJ Stroud has a lot on his plate, and I wonder who's going to step up. My answer is going to be Jaden Higgins, the second-round pick from Iowa State. I think he's not going to step up immediately. I think it's going to take a couple weeks for him to get acclimated with the NFL and the speed of the game, but I think he'll do nicely. So my prediction for the Texans, 11-6. I see them winning the entire division, completely sweeping every team. If they don't, they'll be a disappointment. Next up, the Indianapolis Colts. At 8-9 last year, they had a mixed bag at quarterback play with Joe Flacco and Anthony Richardson. This year, they had a very controversial, in my opinion, quarterback battle between Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson, where Daniel Jones won it. And yes, the way I'm saying Daniel Jones, you can see my disgust for Daniel Jones. So the first question I have for the Colts, why Daniel Jones is your quarterback? I don't know if Daniel Jones is going to really move the needle enough for this offense. I get it. They picked him up to be competition for Anthony Richardson with the expectation probably within the front office that Anthony Richardson was going to win. And the fact that he didn't, it pretty much tells me that his time in Indianapolis is pretty much over. Once the season's over, he might get traded, cut, waived. I don't know, but I don't see him being in the Colts uniform any much longer. Daniel Jones basically is there to play this full season unless injuries happen or extreme poor play happens. Is Shane Steichen's job safe? I'm going to be honest with you, just like Kevin Stefanski, I know he's been there with the Colts for the last 3 to 4 years. I don't really think so. But they're not really moving the needle, and I could see them making a change in Indianapolis, maybe get a fresh start with a different coach. But again, is it going to be mid-season? It's going to be end of season? That's the question. That's the one I can't answer. But I think a change will happen. What are some of the key additions for the Colts? Daniel Jones, Cameron Bynum, the excellent safety from the Minnesota Vikings who did all those celebrations, Travarius Ward from the 49ers, and of course, my man, the best tight end in the draft this year, Tyler Warren. So my prediction for the Colts, 6-11. They have a lot of pieces on offense and defense. I'm just not confident in the quarterback play enough to justify that they're going to get more wins. And I don't think they're going to be completely terrible. I think that crown goes actually to the next team that we're going to talk about. Next up, the Tennessee Titans. At 3-14, everything go wrong with Will Levis making memes and Brian Callahan essentially almost losing his job after 1 year. So the first question is, what game will Brian Callahan get fired? The question is, how long does he last? I think it depends. If the team starts off 0-4, 0-5, he's gone. If they win 2 and lose 4, 2-3, I think he'll stick around a little bit longer. If they actually surprise people and win games, yeah, he'll stay there. But I think the more likely, maybe 90% gut feeling, they're going to start off probably 1-6 or 1-5, and he's going to get fired at that point. My next question is, how will Cam Ward do? I think he's going to be fine offensively. I don't think he's going to have a Jaden Daniels or even a CJ Stroud type season, but he should have a decent season. He might throw a little bit more interceptions just because he might try to make things happen that aren't there. And the talent level in Tennessee isn't high, so I don't really predict that he's going to have this amazing season, but he should be like kind of a mid-average season. And I think next year and the year after that, you'll see some mass improvement for him, depending on who his new coach will be. Let's talk about some key additions. They brought in Tyler Lockett, who used to play for the Seattle Seahawks. I think it's a great slot receiver. They got Johnny Hecker, one of the great punters in the NFL. Of course, Cam Ward himself, Kevin Winston Jr. at safety from Penn State, and Gunnar Helm, the tight end from Texas. So, what's my prediction? They'll be 4-13 by the end of the season. Again, I think some of their wins will come towards the end of the season when their backup coach is going to take over and probably win a game or two that they probably wouldn't have otherwise win. I just don't really think I see Brian Callahan being there that much longer or not making it through the full season, unfortunately. And finally, let's talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars. At 4-13, they had a miserable season full of injuries, from Trevor Lawrence being injured, ETN being injured, Evan Ingram being injured, Christian Kirk being injured, Gabe Davis being injured. A lot of injuries on that offensive side of the ball. They replaced Doug Peterson with Liam Cohen from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So let's have our two questions and ask, how will Travis Hunter be used this year? Is he going to be full offense and defense? Is he going to be part offense, part defense? Is he going to be fully defense, offense? I think he's going to be 95% deployed early on in the season on offense and 5% on defense, on special plays, maybe scenarios like jump ball scenarios, end of game scenarios where you need his hands, maybe even special team plays when the team is behind and is trying to get an onside kick. I think you'll see him a lot there. I don't see him playing 100 snaps in the NFL because the difference here from college, on average, they play about 11 to 12 games. And then if you add a bowl game or here or there, that's like 13 games. But you're playing 17 NFL regular season games. I just do not see Travis Hunter playing that often, and you don't want to burn him out, right? And I think the Jacksonville Jaguars have a hole at wide receiver that he needs to fill. As Brian Thomas Jr. is ascending as the number one receiver over there, they need a number two, and I think Travis Hunter being the number two is also good for him. He's not going to face the number one corner every week. He's going to face the number two corner, and he should be able to eat religiously. My next question, can Trevor Lawrence salvage his career this year? Trevor Lawrence has had one of the weirdest career trajectories for a first-round pick. Urban Meyer was his first-year head coach, was dismal for his development. In comes Doug Peterson. They start off slow, but then he gets hot. Yeah, he makes that, horrible first half in the playoffs and then rebounds and win that game against the Chargers. I mean, there's a lot of questions at Jacksonville. I'm hoping that Trevor Lawrence can find his groove and finally really hit his stride as a quarterback, because they're paying him a lot of money and they have expectations for him to bring them to the promised land. And it's going to be hard to justify that when he's turnover prone and he hasn't been healthy the last few seasons. We'll see. Key additions for the Jaguars include Patrick McCary, Chuma Edoga from the Jets, actually, and Travis Hunter. So my prediction, they'll win 4 more games than they did last year, and they'll be 8-9. Not good enough to make the playoffs, but good enough to show improvement and to show that Liam Cohen actually knows what he's doing at off. Next up, the AFC East. Let's start off with the Buffalo Bills, who ended the season at 13-4. Josh Allen was the MVP and looked exceptional last year. So we have a couple questions. Can Josh Allen keep it up? I think he can. Yes, he doesn't have a true number one receiver, but he has a lot of good pieces around, and that offense knows how to hum with Joe Brady at the helm and Josh Allen basically throwing the ball and being Superman. So I know his completions went down last year. His turnovers went down last year. I expect the same to happen this year again. And then the other part is, can the Bills secure a number one seed? That is the question that I think is biggest on my mind. I think if Buffalo could secure the number one seed, they will get to the Super Bowl. But the sad news I'm going to share with everyone is I don't think they get the number one seed. I do not see it. I think that goes to Kansas City, unfortunately, again. So let's talk about some key additions for the Buffalo Bills. We have wide receiver Joshua Palmer, who I think will help solidify that wide receiver core. They brought in Joey Bosa. If he can stay healthy, he might be able to provide some good depth at defensive end. And they brought in Maxwell Harrison, a cornerback from Kentucky in this year's draft. So my prediction, they'll be 13-4, and they will win the division again. I don't see much difference unless a major injury happens. And again, my predictions are not based on major injury. My next team, the Miami Dolphins. One of the harder teams to look at just because they have so much great potential. But whether it's injuries, poor play, or Tua just getting injured every year, it's kind of hard to really predict this team. So let's ask 2 quick questions. Number 1, can Mike McDonald right the ship? I think he can. The question I have is this team going to be able to stay healthy? That's their biggest knock. If they're healthy, they're going to compete. They're going to compete exceptionally well. But the problem is they never are healthy. They've consistently been injured. However, I'm going to go on a limb and say Tua stays healthy relatively for this season. But I still think it's not enough against Buffalo. And I think there's such good competition in the AFC. I don't think it's going to matter. Are they going to be good? My next question, is there enough pieces for the Dolphins to be able to bounce back. I think adding Minka Fitzpatrick to replace Javon Holland's a good move. And I think they have some pieces all around, but they already suffered a couple of injuries with Devon Achane, already expected to miss time, Chop Robinson to miss time. I mean, I think they'll be a good team offensively, but I'm not sure I could say they're a playoff team. So let's talk about some of the key additions they added. They added James Daniels, linebackers Terrell Dodson, Willie Gay Jr., and they added some draft picks, including Kenneth Grant from Michigan, Ollie Gordon from Oklahoma State, and they also added veteran Matt Judon. But my prediction for this team is 7-10. I think they're going to be a good team, but I think that I have an expectation that they're going to lose some games just because they're not going to be able to sustain some defensive stops. And I think offensively, we'll have to see how this team looks. Up next, the New York Jets. The Jets have now replaced the head coach the last couple of years with one that I'm actually excited about, which is Aaron Glenn. I grew up actually watching Aaron Glenn play safety for the Jets, and I enjoyed how well he played. I think he brings a good passion, some credibility as a defensive coordinator for the last few years for the Detroit Lions. So I'm excited to see what he does with the Jets. No more Aaron Rodgers. In comes Justin Fields. Let's ask two quick questions for the Jets. Number one, can Justin Fields prove that he could be a top NFL quarterback, or at least a top 10 NFL quarterback? I'm not sure. I think Justin Fields have all the tools, but I'm hoping that he can actually show the NFL that he has a good arm, he makes good decisions, and with Garrett Wilson, someone he already has rapport with, I think that should be beneficial to his development. But I'm still kind of questioning really if Alan Lazard and anybody else on that offense is going to really help out. Mason Taylor, the second round pick out of LSU and the son of legendary edge rusher Jason Taylor, if he makes a critical move up and he helps to elevate that offense, if Breece Hall can stay healthy and Breece Hall can, rush with Braylon Allen, I think they got a lot of weapons on that offense, and I think he can be good. But again, it just really depends on who's their number two and who's going to step up when Garrett Wilson is going to expect to get a lot of coverage. My next question is, can the Jets make the playoffs this year? No.
Tired of this, Grandpa. That's too damn bad.
I don't really know if I could see the Jets making the playoffs, but hey, I think they can, but not this year. I think it's going to be next year. I think they'll surprise a lot of people, especially with the coaching staff kind of being better acclimated. And with a new quarterback, I think it's a lot to act. They drafted Armand Membu from Missouri. I think that's another good, solid offensive lineman to go with last year's first-round pick, Olu Fashanu. So with that being said, I think their offensive line should be better than they have in the last few years. We'll see. So let's talk about some key additions. Of course, Justin Fields, as mentioned earlier. Andre Cisco, the safety from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Armand Membu from Missouri, as I mentioned. And Brandon Stevens to play corner. My prediction for the Jets, 7-10. Lastly, for the AFC East, the New England Patriots. At 4-13, it was a really weird year where their offense was not that good, and midseason they switched to Drake May. So my first question is, can the real Drake May please stand up? I think Drake May is going to be a fantastic quarterback in the NFL, and I hope that with the addition of Stephon Diggs and maybe some consistent coaching, I think he will be good. He's shown the ability to make passes all over the field, move out the pocket, and make good throws. I think Drake May will do exceptional here, and I think he's going to have a nice trajectory on the upward. They really got themselves a baller with Drake May. The next question is, can Mike Vrabel do it again like he did in Tennessee, but this time in New England? I think he can. I think he's going to make the team better. I'm just not going to say it's this year. But I think this team is going to improve vastly. They're going to be much more disciplined on the defensive side of the ball and the offensive side of the ball. I think in a year or two, they'll definitely be a team to be really threatening. And again, the AFC East is going to have two teams, the Jets and the Patriots. I think they're going to be really good next year, and people are going to be really concerned. Let's talk about some of their key additions. Stephon Diggs, he signed a 3-year deal to join the New England Patriots. They brought in Harold Landry II, who used to play for the Tennessee Titans, and he knows Mike Vrabel's defense. Will Campbell, the offensive tackle from LSU. Love that kid. That kid is that kid's going to protect Drake May. And then they brought in Trayvon Henderson, who, despite his injury history at Ohio State, one of the better running back prospects I've seen in a while. I think he's going to do exceptional. And I think he's actually going to take that job from Ramondre Stevenson, which for a lot of fantasy owners is a thank goodness, because Ramondre Stevenson is one of the weirdest running backs I've seen in terms of how his stats are accumulated. You don't feel like he does much in the game, and then you look at his stats, and he's like a 1,000-yard rusher. My prediction for the Patriots, 6-11. They'll win 2 more games than they did last year. I think they'll definitely be in a lot more into games. The defense is still pretty good. I think they're going to be better than they were. If Christian Gonzalez stays healthy, I think they'll be fantastic on the corners. And then again, I think the offense is going to take a leap forward. Again, I just don't think they're going to be enough to make it where they're going to all of a sudden win the division. However, don't be surprised if the Patriots actually win more than 6 games.
Bruh.
Play the AFC North, so they're going to have to play the Ravens, the Steelers, the Bengals, and the Browns. So I could see them going 1-3 in that situation. So that's the only reason why I'm not giving them a much higher grade or at least more wins this year. They just have a tougher schedule. Let's talk about the last division in the AFC West, with the Kansas City Chiefs, the AFC champions, at 12-5. They had a lot of success last year, despite having one of the worst offenses in the NFL. However, they still have Patrick Mahomes, they still have Andy Reid, they still have Chris Jones. Let's ask 2 quick questions about the Kansas City Chiefs. Number 1, can they repeat as AFC champions? Which I expect them to do. I expect them to be able to get back to the Super Bowl. I don't see really much going different. They do have some questions on the offensive side of the ball that I think they need to get addressed. And I don't know if they did enough in terms of revamping that offensive line to really help protect Patrick Mahomes. I don't know if they had enough on the wide receiver room that's going to really scream that they're going to make a leap forward offensively. They were one of the worst ranked teams in terms of offensive production. They ranked 15th in the NFL in points at 22.6 per game. They were 22nd in rushing yards at only 105 yards per game. And while 12th in passing doesn't sound like bad statistics, this is a team that had an elite defense. They just weren't good offensively. They were just middle of the pack offensively. And with Rashid Rice expected to miss the first couple of games of the season, there's going to be a lot more pressure on Xavier Worthy and Travis Kelce to produce. And Travis Kelce also the last few years have not been Travis Kelce that we're expecting. So I'm very curious to see how this offense is going to do. I think it's more on the strength of their defense and Andy Reid being creative with the pieces he got. My last question, can the offense really do something? Again, as I mentioned, I'm not sure. The offense really has some pieces, but they don't really, Isaiah Pacheco is coming back a full year. Kareem Hunt is another example. I really hope that this team really solidify themselves offensively. I hope they do work a little bit better. Key additions: Gardner Minshew as a backup quarterback, Jalen Moore as an offensive lineman, Robert Tonyan to play tight end, and Josh Simmons, who was their first round pick from Ohio State. My prediction is they're going to be 13-4. They'll win one more game than they expected than last year. I think they're going to go to Highmark Stadium November 2nd to play the Buffalo Bills. And while this is an interesting statistic, the last 3 regular season games between the Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs, the Bills actually have won those games. And the last 4 playoff games, the Chiefs have won the last 4 games against the Bills. This year is going to end that trend of the regular season. I think the Kansas City Chiefs are going to go into Highmark Stadium and beat the Buffalo Bills to secure the number 1 seed, because they're going to have the same record at 13-4, but the strength of schedule as well as the head-to-head is going to give the Kansas City Chiefs the number 1 seed. Next up, the Los Angeles Chargers. At 11-6, they surprised some people being able to make the playoffs. However, they had a stinker of a playoff performance when Justin Herbert threw 4 interceptions against the Houston Texans. Can Justin Herbert bounce back? The answer is yes. I think he can. I expect him to, because he's a professional. I will say that they did some things offensively to help him out, bringing in Omarion Hampton in the first round from the North Carolina Tar Heels, a great running back, had 17 rushing touchdowns last year. They brought in Najee Harris from the Steelers, so he should help out, solidify that room. They brought back Keenan Allen. I think that's going to be really helpful, because I'm not sure about Johnston, if he's really going to be the guy ever. I mean, there's a lot of clips online if you go and you see he's just not being able to catch passes at all. But we'll see. Jim Harbaugh has been able to do magic with less. Let's talk about the key additions. As I mentioned, Omarion Hampton is a good one. Trey Harris is another good one. Najee Harris is a good option. Keenan Allen. And they also picked up Mekhi Becton, who played with the Eagles last year at guard, a Super Bowl winning guard. He's coming over. A massive loss that I have to highlight, and it's unfortunate, is Rashawn Slater, who they just gave a extension for 4 years. They lost him for the season. That means Joe Alt's going to slide over to left tackle. That's going to really shuffle this offensive line, and I think it's a massive loss that cannot be ignored. I have to acknowledge it just because of what it can do to the offensive line. So my prediction for this team, 10-7. I do think they're going to take a step back. They're not going to win 11 games like they did last year. However, they'll make the playoffs and they'll win a playoff game. Book it. The next team, the Denver Broncos. Sean Payton, I'm sorry. I'll say that. I did not understand the Bo Nix pick last year. I was very critical. I thought, hey, this guy is done. And then, of course, he proves us otherwise by having one of the better rookie seasons I've seen in a long time. Bo Nix is a real deal guy. So let's talk about two questions that we have for the Denver Broncos. Number one, will Bo Nix have a sophomore slump? Yes. Not a massive slump, but he will slump. I mean, again, most guys always experience a sophomore slump. The production is going to dip just a little bit. I'm not sure who their running back is. It's going to be RJ Harvey. It's going to be J.K. Dobbins. I mean, they didn't really have much last year either, so I don't know if that's improved this year. Again, we'll see how RJ Harvey and J.K. Dobbins do in that with that offensive line. They did go out and get Evan Ingram. I think that's going to be a benefit. He's going to be a nice safety blanket for Bo Nix. I just think that their schedule is going to be a little bit more tough this year, so I don't know if I would give them the edge to say that they're going to do exceptionally well. With that being said, my next question is all the pieces going to gel? They brought in a lot of pieces. They surprised a lot of people last year. I don't think they're going to surprise much people this year. People know what to expect from the Denver Broncos this year. But is their offense going to be good enough or at least elevated enough to really help out that defense? Only time will tell. Key additions: Evan Ingram, Dre Greenlaw, Talona Hufanga, J.K. Dobbins, R.J. Harvey, and Zadeh Barron. I think one of the best corners coming out of the draft out of Texas. So my prediction is going to shock a little bit of people. I'm going to say that they're going to be about 7-10. Yes, they went 10-7 last year. I think some things are going to change. I think there's going to be a slump there. They might lose some games. Some games are going to be a little bit more challenging to score points on. I don't know if I could see them winning against Kansas City unless Kansas City just completely, is well on their way to the number one seed early. I think there's going to be a battle to get to the number one seed. So I don't see some of these gimme games that they might have won. And again, I think there's going to be much stiffer competition this year. The last team in the AFC West, the Las Vegas Raiders. At 4-13, they did an overhaul on the entire team, getting rid of coach, getting a new quarterback in. So now Pete Carroll's the head coach. Geno Smith is the quarterback. Brock Bowers had an exceptional rookie season last year. He's coming back better, bigger, and better than ever. And I think they added some pieces, and I'm curious to see what's going to happen. So the first question is, will Pete Carroll make this team competitive? I'm going to go on a limb and say yes. It's Pete Carroll. Everywhere he's gone, he's made the team exceptional. Remember, he did win the Super Bowl with the Seattle Seahawks, and before that, he was with the USC Trojans, and he did a really good job there. So I don't have any doubt that this team is going to be a lot better. Geno Smith brings some credibility at quarterback for them. They drafted the best running back in the draft in Ashton Jeanty. Again, Brock Bowers is still there. And they made some noticeable decisions and draft some pieces on the offensive side of the ball that I think will benefit them a lot. Speaking of Ashton Jeanty, my next question: can he win Offensive Rookie of the Year? Heck yes. He should win it. I mean, he has no competition from Raheem Mostert for snaps, unless an injury happened or he just needs a moment or a goal line type situation. But Jeanty should be able to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. He may be in competition with Cam Ward, I will say Tyler Warren, and I'll even say Travis Hunter. But I really expect him to win it handingly, again, unless a circumstance happens out of his control. So let's talk about some key additions. Geno Smith comes in, brings credibility to that quarterback room instantly. They brought in Jeremy Chin. They brought in Alex Kappa to help solidify that offensive line. They brought in Devin White, who used to play for the Buccaneers. Raheem Mostert is a nice change of pace back for them. Jeanty, again, as mentioned before, they drafted Jack Beth from TCU and Dante Thornton, the speedy wide receiver from Tennessee. I expect this team to actually win 5 games more than they did last year. They're going to win 5 more games than last year, so they're going to be 9-8. The Raiders will be a much more competent team. I think they're definitely going to play teams much more physical and much more tough. I think that's Pete Carroll's specialty. He definitely wants to make the team more physical. And I could see, again, with Brock Bowers being probably one of the best, if not the best tight end in the NFL, I think this team is going to reach, at least going to be in competition for a playoff spot. And there you have it. That's my preview for the AFC. Let me know in the comments. Am I crazy? Am I off? Again, as always, like, comment, and subscribe. And again, let's make it count.
Tell them to bring me my money.
Yeah! I am back. What it do, baby?